Thank you for joining us and welcome to Weaving Stories of Your Well-Being. So this is hosted and brought to you by PureEsperanza. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing forth consciousness while educating body, mind, and soul in the art of well-being. If this is your first time joining us, we began this Weaving Stories of Your Well-Being back in February of 2021. And for all of us, I'm sure we all have a sense that it feels like it's been worlds away or maybe even lifetimes away since last year already. And with that in mind, we began the series live with some events and people that were joining us. And then we went to recording for scheduling purposes, etc. And today, to recap and be the 12th episode, our final episode in this series, we invited a few guests today to share with us and be able to have some discourse and insights on a very special story today. And with that in mind, as you know, if you've watched Weaving Stories of Your Well-Being, our dear co-host Balaka Ghosal has been with us and mostly been our storyteller this year. Balaka, thank you so much for being here. She is also the owner and founder of Green Writer Copyright, but is involved in so many projects. And Balaka, we're so happy that you've been able to share this deep love and passion and wisdom that was part of your upbringing and part of how you were raised hearing stories and how beautiful and healing, besides educational, they are for us.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's a great opportunity for the storyteller in me to have these experiences of sharing some of those stories, timeless stories.
Yeah, they really are timeless. And we always try to bring them to you so that they can really cover different aspects of our well-being, body, mind, and soul. And with that in mind, we have so many things that are occurring for us every day and how we experience our life and our experiences around us. And so many of these stories have offered such great, valuable insights and even tools as to how we're going to work with those different experiences and perhaps even get us thinking into perhaps new ways that we can encounter experiences, such as today, and for all of us, we live in a world with so many different uncertainties. Obviously, we all have experienced the last few years with global kind of changes. And with that, we have had to face so many unknown pieces. And we still are at a time when the world is changing, we're evolving, and there are many uncertainties that we face. And there is a grace to how we encounter those experiences, and perhaps even a very special story today that can offer us a little bit of something to reflect upon, perhaps inspire us, perhaps allow us to transcend the moment of what we might face or perceive as a challenge. So, without further ado, Balaka, I think you have a very special story to share with us today.
Yes, I do. Something that stirred me for a very long time. The once upon a time is a very good beginning for all stories from back then. Once upon a time, there was a king. And today my story is about a king and a huge problem that he had. He was a great king in his big kingdom. Everyone was happy, and he was bringing up his son, the prince, the handsome prince, to be the next heir. But somewhere along the way, this prince fell into bad company. He was under the influence of another young man, a few years older than him, and not a very good, wise man, according to the king. And he was worried. He talked to his son to dissuade him from that friendship, did not succeed. He asked his ministers, so what do you think? And they were worried too. And it couldn't be done by force. It had the friendship that had to be stopped from inside. And he kept on thinking, and he had sleepless nights. He said, what should I do? How can I knock some reason into my son's head? But there is apparently nothing wrong. It's just a wise king who could perceive that this man, slightly older, can have or is having more influence on my son. And very soon he will influence his judgment. That's where he was worried. But nothing he could do. The queen worried, the king worried, and he could not announce a reward for anyone who could stop this friendship. It's something that has to be done secretly. So he was looking around for a solution, and nothing seemed to be in sight. And under this man's influence, someday when his son becomes king, he might even lose his empire, or he might turn into a very despotic king. So it was a big problem. And then he'd whispered to his ministers that secretly, look around for someone who can talk some sense into my son. The ministers tried and failed already, but then one day, one of his ministers came and said, Your Royal Highness, I seem to have found a very old woman who solves many such life's, strange problems. And when I shared the problem with her, she smiled and said, she can do it. I said, what reward does she ask for? I said, oh, nothing much. She didn't say anything. Would you like to meet her? Sure. And secretly, she was one day brought to the inner chambers of the king and queen. And she turned out to be a 90-year-old, or, the age that you cannot imagine, a very, very old woman, all wrinkly face and crinkly hair. And she was all, stooping over a stake, and her hand was shaking. And she said, this is no big deal. I can do it. I said, what do you need? They said, oh, all I need is a very fancy litter, the palanquin. In India, they call it the palki. A very fancy one that the prince has never seen. Get a new one crafted and get it sent to my home and announce that a princess from a very far away land is coming to meet this royal family and the prince. That will be all, Your Royal Highness. And I said, well, that can be done. Well, get it done as soon as you can and send it over. And I will come one afternoon when the prince is in his front garden with his friend. That was all. When would she do the talking with the prince? Well, please do as I told you, and she left. So he got one special litter, tiny one with brocade curtains and bejeweled, with 4 or 6 men to carry her, with bodyguards around her, and a band. She wanted some music to play to make it a fancy arrival. And so the word went around that a princess was coming, and the prince was in the front garden with his friend, waiting for the little parade to arrive. And then they heard the music. And the friend was kind of teasing him that now the wedding bells will ring very soon, now that this beautiful princess is coming to meet you. And they cajoled and, chided and had fun until the parade came and stood far away outside the garden. And the messenger came running to these 2 people. And he bowed to them and said, who is the prince? And the prince said, I am the prince. And he bowed to him, and then he turned to the friend and said, "The princess would like to meet you, sir." And the friend was surprised. And me? No, I think you've made a mistake. I'm sure the princess wants to meet the prince. And the messenger bowed again and said, "No, she specifically wants to meet you." And they looked at each other, bewildered, like, really? And the prince was also a little surprised. But then he thought that maybe the princess is shy to meet me in public like this. So he's using my friend maybe to send a letter or to send a message, and said, "Go on, friend, go and meet her." And the friend was also a little proud that the princess, after all, wants to meet me. And he went all the way. The curtain parted, and guess who was inside? The old lady in rags, and the same crinkly skin and the crinkly hair. And she just parted her hair and looked at him and said, "Psst." And the man was very surprised because he was expecting to see a very beautiful princess. And there was this very old lady, and even not only old, she was poor, in rags. And all she said was a psst. And then the brocade curtain was shut again, and the messenger said, "Sir, the interview is over." And the litter moved on. And the man didn't know whether to laugh or to say something spitefully, but he had a bewildered, crazy, funny look. And by then the prince was running to him and said, "What's she like? What did she say?" And then he chuckled and said, "Don't you worry. That's no princess. That's an old woman." And she said, "Puss." And I said, "Come on, now, don't play with me, please. This is a princess. That's what we all know. We're expecting her at the palace in any minute." And he said, "Well, no, believe me, it's an old woman, a poor old woman in rags." And she said, "Whatever that means." The prince was thinking, he is hiding something. They must have exchanged something very special, and he doesn't want to tell me. So with some pride in his heart, he said, "Well, I'll be off to the palace right now." But while all this was happening, the palanquin, or the litter, had reached the inner chambers of the palace. The king and the queen were waiting eagerly. Out stepped the old woman, and she said, "The job has been done, Your Royal Highness." And so, "Well, when did you get to talk to the prince?" They said, "That will not be necessary, Your Royal Highness. I should be off right away. And if the prince were to ask about the princess, just say she is very sick and down with a headache and would like to meet you all tomorrow. And by early morning, tell him that the princess had to leave on an urgent matter, and hide the litter, never to be seen again." And the old woman just left as secretly as last time. And the prince came running in saying, "Father, father, what about the princess? Has she arrived?" And the father said, "No, son, she cannot meet us tonight. She is down with a headache." And the prince just couldn't wait. He just didn't sleep well the whole night. He turned this way and that way, and by morning, when he got up to meet the princess, he was told that she had to leave on an urgent matter. He was very heartbroken, very disappointed, because the friend got to meet her and he didn't. And he met the friend again. The same conversation unfolded. He kept saying, "I have not seen the princess. There was no princess, believe me. And each time he said that, he would come with a mysterious smile on his face, saying it was an old woman who said, "Psst." And by this third day, he was in a bad mood. The prince did not want to meet anybody. He was locked up in his room. And the next day, he was flying a kite on the roof. And by the fifth day, the other young man, stopped coming to the palace. And every day, messengers were reporting to the king. And after the fifth day, he was informed that the friend has stopped visiting and the prince has not summoned him. So he has stopped meeting him. The friendship seemed like it ended. And the king could never figure out that I had such a big problem for years. For months, I've not had a good night's sleep. And what did this woman do? Without a conversation, without trying to convince him that the friendship really ended. So you see, there are so many possibilities of our wisdom to pick on the story and find out where is the key to the solution. Sometimes the biggest problems in this world that seem like there is no solution can have a tiny one, just like the huge doors open on tiny hinges, you know, just when you're not expecting. So I would, before I come up with my take on it, I'm definitely interested to know what's your take on it? Like, from which point of view, and what's the thing that'll make you chuckle many days from today?
Well, Balaka, if I may begin just by asking everybody to unmute themselves when you go to speak and to turn their cameras on so we can talk. And that way people can share their insights. What I really heard from the story was, you know, this ability to create. Perhaps the king, we never really knew what was his main drive for wanting to end that friendship, but nevertheless, there was an outside force that came to end it, and it did seem very subtle, and it did seem very mysterious in how it happened, and it was something that had to happen without the force, without the discussion about it, the explanations, all of that. It just happened in this mysterious way. And I'm sure after this discussion, we can all share maybe bits and pieces of how we've had an experience in life where we've had something happen and we don't exactly know. We were looking for an answer. We were looking for a solution. We didn't know how it was going to come to be. And then all of a sudden, mysteriously, something unraveled and something unfolded that was unexpected. So we will open that up for discussion afterwards, but I wanted to kind of segue this discussion just by offering that little bit and maybe what other people got from the story as well, particularly as it relates to, you know, maybe just some insights about the relevancy of how we all experience life at times, or even what's going on now today.
Yes. I think it's very funny, because before I came to this call now, I was on a talk with some exchange, and it was an exchange, and then we also had the same topic. I mean, I could bring it in the same topic. Sometimes in our life, it's just to say how to turn simple into complicated and vice versa. I think we are sometimes mastering this. Just very simple things, because we are so much attached. We are just sucked in, and we haven't got some distance to it. And then we don't find any until somebody else perhaps says, hey, did you know you only have to move this little thing and then perhaps it will work. Otherwise, you go to the left-hand side or to the right-hand side. Also, and on the other hand, sometimes there occurs very difficult things, and we look at them and say, I think, and we see the solution. But I think it's also a question of how we are focusing on something and how much love we bring into it. I think that's also the reason. It's not when we try to do it only with reasoning, it's usually not a perfect, not a good solution for everything. But yeah, if we try to
something you really said nicely, that Romy, that sometimes we're too close to the problem and we're too invested in it, that the fear actually clouds our reasoning, and then the solution doesn't show up, whereas someone else does it. But someone with insight, sometimes addressing it directly doesn't help, and she tried a roundabout way. And if that has happened sometimes to you, because the woman knew exactly what to do to start the rift, she hit it right at that point where two young men, my most vulnerable place in the heart of two young men, So
how about someone else's?
Yes.
You have, both of you, Romy and Esperanza, both of you have said what I was also thinking. But I just have one small thing to say is, if you need help, if somehow you need help that you are not able to solve yourself, ask for it. Ask for it from a person who you believe in, who you think can help. Not anybody or everybody, somebody that you think can help you. Just open up to that person. Other than that, most of you and Romy, both of you have covered it.
Beautifully you said it, that, even in this story, the king went to his ministers who he trusted very much to look for someone who might have a solution. And when this minister brought in a very old woman who he wouldn't be able to trust right from the streets, but he trusted because of that minister who brought her, saying that there might be something in her that can solve. And although apparently a king trusting a pauper in rags, there's something, that gut feeling that I trust this man who brought her in, and I'm going to trust. And when there's there's no other solution, it's like you have your back on the wall, then that's a wise thing to do, even when apparent reasoning doesn't seem like she might have it. But he trusted that thing and he sought for help. Very well said.
Let's hear what else someone has to say. Graham or Jody.
Don.
Graham, would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation. I did not catch the first bit of the story, so honestly, I don't know what the story is about. However, I was present to receive a good portion of it. And I think what's really important for me is that, I used to tell my kids bedtime stories, and I really enjoyed the creation of it, because I felt a little bit of pressure to keep the narrative rolling, and as I felt that pressure, I was able to enter a different space, like a different storytelling space, and it really felt like it was like channeling, or I was offering my voice and all of my adaptive abilities to a story that was unfolding before everybody. So it was a really magical space. And I was realizing as I was listening to this story that I haven't listened to a story for so long. I haven't been told a story. And it's really so magical, because it's just like a different, it's such a deep part of us as human beings, but we don't get to exercise this muscle of imagining through somebody else's voice and just, you know, being told a story is really sweet and and powerful, because it like instantly got me into that mythic place where I'm not thinking and I'm just being led through, you know, these gates of the mind and of the imagination. So
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much,
so
Graham. I
much.
think that that's so important. And I think that's that is the impetus of why we began Weaving Stories of Your Well-Being, because it's one thing to get information. We live in a day and age, you know, modern times, where we're just loaded, you know, with all kinds of information. But this is a different way to receive something that innately resonates with us. And it comes from that mythic place you were talking about, Graham. And it's definitely something that is powerful, because it enters in a way that's not coming through our head and how we're analyzing, because we're just listening and receiving the qualities of this imaginative piece. And so that is a different space. It is a different kind of dimension. And there's so much opportunity there for that power to heal, like spontaneously and simultaneously as we get a message, you know, just like that. So it's a
Yeah.
really beautiful thing. Yeah, I'd love to hear from Jody or Dawn. Yeah, thank you.
So I thought that was like phenomenal, the storytelling, and everyone's input has given me different lenses to view it. I guess the one thing I was stuck on, like with the story, and I don't know if that's the right word, but like those who have been close to you, really listening to them and trusting what they're saying. Like that was his friend, and he let something like this come between them, not really taking hold of someone he knew that had been so close to him.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one thing that I hadn't even thought about. And it's interesting, because had that been something that was a very strong bond of some kind, it might have not broke the whatever was there.
Yeah. So it was a good judgment on the king's part, who could see that there wasn't much, depth in it, but it was becoming a strong influence. But doubt by itself can be a wrecker, and it can wreck relationships when we let doubt take over. It enters as a tiny thing, just like that man walking towards the litter and hearing the psst. That's just a few seconds, right? They didn't spend time together, nothing, but just a tiny little thing. It enters, there's a saying that doubt enters like a needle and comes out like a camel. So it grows and grows and grows to wreck a relationship. And on the other end, there was this trust in this seemingly improbable place, this old woman saying, I can do it. Or even when she said, the job has been done, my Royal Highness, he was bewildered, but he still trusted that, yes, I will go with this process that even though I do not understand it, I will let it flow and be curious. And the solution came about. So it's two opposite things it's showing us, that trust in one direction from the king's end, and from the other point of view, we can see that how doubt could really destroy a seemingly big relationship.
Jody, how about you?
Yes, I also am grateful for the bit that I got to take in, and a little bummed I didn't get the background context, but some of the things that were coming up for me is how it's so human for our minds to just instantly think the worst, and how key communication can be in our relationships. So I just really appreciated that this story. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. And I want to kind of circle back around to the idea of that doubt and just the piece as far as the trust. So we have uncertainties that happen. We're looking for some kind of solution. And today's story, when we post this on our YouTube channel, the story will read "The Magic Solution." But the magic solution lies in the magic of it, because there's this component of the doubt and how that's at work, and then the trust. And so this is where I would like to touch base with all of you, and perhaps what your experiences are that are a little bit more relatable about something tangible in your own lives, in your own experience, where you experience something like a doubt and then the accessing of a trust. And perhaps that was even led to a faith, but something that maybe is very pertinent to you. And I would just like to start that off with just a quick little synopsis. And for all of us, because of time, we can just share, a couple of minutes of some insight on an experience. But one thing that happened in my own experience, in my own life, was that back in 2020, before the pandemic was really announced and things like that, my husband's company went through an acquisition and he lost his job right before the lockdowns and all of those things. And, there are so many pieces that come out during a situation like that, because my husband, there's a strong, at that moment, there was a strong identity, obviously, with his role and, the provider and, what he was accustomed to. And as the months rolled on, and because of all the different COVID restrictions and things like that, people weren't hiring right away. And he had never been unemployed for that kind of length of time. We rolled out into 10 months of unemployment. And we were, had somebody told us, this is what's going to happen, and you're going to have 10 months. We were in downtown Chicago in a high rise. We were accustomed to a certain lifestyle, all of those things. We would have been like, how could that be? We won't make it past like 2 months, but it didn't happen that way. And I can't even exactly tell you how it happened, because there was a lot of moving and shuffling around and adapting that we had to do, but we did that. And there were so many times where you could feel that wave of doubt coming in, like, oh, what is happening? Where's going to be the end in sight? Oh no, are we going to make it to the next month, or whatever the deal was? And then it didn't happen that way. And it turns out that it almost felt for both of us as though there was an underlying test, so to speak, where we had to dispel the doubt, and we had to step into an inner awareness and knowing, a trust, perhaps in the invisible world. And see, in the story, I thought of the woman who was kind of mysterious as almost like an invisible force that comes in, because she comes in mysteriously, leaves mysteriously, all those kinds of things. But in this situation in real life, we did that, and we kept reasserting and reinvesting, and things unfolded to where he was offered a position, in fact, a few at the same time, and he still had to trust, even though one was like on the line and waiting. There was something inwardly saying, no, wait for this other one, but it wasn't like in paper yet. So it was like, are you going to trust or are you not? You've come this far, so what do you want to do? And of course, that's the angst of like, oh, but I've been without work this long and there's already something concrete, so I must take that. But it was like, no, don't do that. And so we sat back and waited, and all of that was like a breathing into. And then it unfolded that his position turned out even better than he could have ever imagined. And the opportunity that came for him was even greater. The income was greater. All the things that unfolded were very much more aligned with what his heart really wanted. And so there was this trust that he was able to fall back on. And that then becomes a stepping stone for the other experiences yet to come. And being able to remember, yes, that's a foundational piece. I can go back like that one time and trust.
No.
So
Yeah.
any other things that, perhaps you're
Yeah,
experiencing?
like in your personal lives, if you have
Yeah.
had any such incidents. I have
Yeah,
had,
Balak, I just, when you just pointed it once more out, with faith and with trust and with having no faith and no trust. I just, in this moment, you just pointed it out again. I just thought for myself, how would the story go if we would turn it around? If we would give on the place of trust, of trust, then distrust, and how would the story just for a little moment, it just came to me. It's just, I made up then my story.
If the friendship continued, what would this trust be?
If these two guys would have been going together and talk, and the one friend would have told the prince, hey prince, I have really been with the lady, and the lady did only this and nothing more, and then the prince could say, yes, I believe you, or something like this. If they really would have gone into details, and I think that's what our daily life is already sometimes made for, to talk to people when we just have the slightest idea of distrust also, and say, hey, I feel that it's like this and this and the other person, but then we have to talk about, because otherwise it's just like a little poison. And sometimes it's even little poison will help to destroy a whole big thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. And even in the medical field, when we go for treatment, intricate treatment, like once my grandfather, after his prostate cancer was diagnosed, he wasn't aware of it, but his sons were. And every couple of months, he was in the hospital with a bladder blockage. Nothing, no surgery, repeated surgery wasn't helping. It was just growing back. But then once an orthopedic, who is a bone doctor, and that too from the local hospital, he said, would you trust me? I think I have found out after he saw the reports, that I think I can do something, but I'm a bone specialist, nothing to do with nephrology or urinary expertise. But if you trust me, I can try to cure him. And when every month he was coming to the hospital, my father just said, you know what? A voice inside me tells me, I will go with you and get that surgery done. How does it hurt? Because every month we're taking him for a surgery anyway. And whatever he did, the way he did it, in the next 10 years, my grandfather lived a problem-free life, at least in that part of his health. And it's not magical, it's just that he had some kind of an epiphany that, I'm thinking where the growth is happening and how, and he did a quick surgery that was less than 2 hours, and the problem was struck at the root of it. And my grandfather didn't have any problems, and he died of other reasons, not from the cancer. It's an enigmatic story. We do not know how it worked, just like the king doesn't know what the woman did really, but it gave the results.
Yes.
So sometimes we have to kind of listen intuitively inside us, and sort of whatever is coming from the environment, what is it that we can say yes to deal with a problem that's gnawing at our, base.
Listening to you brings me back to a short, small story. When I was about in my late 20s, I went for a bike ride, and then on a very busy street, and then some car pushed at the side with high speed, about 100 kilometers per hour, but it was not allowed. It was a place where it's about 40 or 50 kilometers. But then I was just fallen down. And then a friend of mine, he took me out, and then we had to rearrange the bicycle and everything. And then we went down, and it seems that nothing big was happened. Then about 1 or 2 days later, I had problem to move my leg. I had problem to move myself. Then I went to the doctor, and then they did treat my knee. And I said, no, I think it's about my back. It's not, you don't have to treat my knee. It's just the reaction. It's on the knee. And then time passed over. They gave me some pills, but I didn't took them. And then after 1 hour, it became very difficult. Then I had to go, long story short, I had to go to the hospital to do all these screens and everything. And then in the end, I came to, I was invited to talk with them about the results. And they told me, oh, you have got in between L2 and L3, you have a discus hernia. You have very fast, we have to do an operation. Otherwise, it could be that you cannot no more move the rest of your life because it's so terrible. And then I was just looking at this man and just asked them, it's very, very bad. And said, okay, what's the risk and how are the, yeah, it's good. About 75% of the people, they are successful. And I said, okay, and what's about the other ones? Then I was just looking at me, but 75%. I said, oh, you know what? Just please give me all this material. I wish you a good life. I have now to go. I think I have to find my own way. And then it took me, I was lying for over a month in the bed. I couldn't move my legs. And so I just didn't know. I don't have to go for operation. I did find 2 types of therapies for 1 year, and I never had problems with the back again. I mean, in this way, I have other things, but not because of discus hernia. It was just trusting that I will find the right people at the right time to do the right thing for me, and it helped me, and I never had to do the operation.
Thank you, Romy. That's a great example. How about Ruma or Jody or Dawn or even Graham? I know, Graham, it looks like you're driving, but any of you, if you have a little bit of insight, we have a little bit of time left. I'd love to hear from you too.
I will share.
Yes, thank you, Dawn.
Yeah, so I guess that's what that one part stuck out to me, him trusting or him not believing what his friend was telling him. And I've had many people come into my life that you can't really explain how they've come in or like why, but the growth that I've had through them as teachers in my life, as just like people to help me to come into who I am meant to be. I've had people talk like, oh, you need to stop talking to that person's no good for you, or whatever the case. And I'm just like, well, I connect with this person. So I think rather than other people getting involved to kind of destroy that part, because it would have taken away from me learning, growing into who I am. It was better for me to just pray on it, like for anyone to be removed that wasn't supposed to be there in my life, and trusting that whoever comes in is meant to be there. And if they're not, they're going to move out at whatever time that's supposed to be.
Very powerful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dawn. Thank you for that share.
What about Jody and Ruma?
Why I talked about trust and asking for help is through a very true story of mine long back. My daughter was, I think, 4 or 5 years old. But I'll make it short, that we were traveling for southern India to visit some places. And at that time, there was no ATM and no credit card or nothing, as you would know. We did not do enough homework to know how much money we should carry with us. And we had a certain time that we took the train, and then another date that we would come back home. So that timing was fixed. So in Madurai, I think, that's a southern Indian place. We knew that we didn't have enough money, but yet we had to go to a certain place to avail the train back home. So my husband got a ticket in they call it over there third class, where there is only sitting, you can only sit, and with people that you are not accustomed to. And I feel really bad now, but not right now, but for a long time I have felt bad that I was judgmental at that time with my surrounding people around me, because they were not of the standard that we call of our kind of people. They were because those third-class passengers are, I feel bad to say that, but I still will have to say it because of my story, that I did not belong there. I felt that I didn't belong there, but we didn't have the money to go to a different compartment. So 3 of us sat there, and in the compartment, in those sitting places, and people were just looking at us and thinking, why are they over here? And then not to talk about the bad smell and all that. Anybody who would have traveled that way would know. But in between, one person who was just looking at us started a conversation with my husband, and I came to know that he was a driver in a good well-known company, and then he said if you need anything, I don't know if he had seen something in our faces or something, and that he said, if you need anything, call me at this number. So then we got down, and then my husband had his number, and we hardly had enough money to even go through those 3 or 4 days. So then my husband said, should I call him? I said, yeah, go ahead, call him, because what other option do we have? So he called that person. Immediately, that man came to our hotel, and it was a very small room. He came there, and he said he had brought money with him. I don't even know how he knew that we needed money. So he came with money, and 1,000 rupees at that time was a lot of money. He being a driver, my husband was a manager in his company. So he gave us that money. That's what I'm saying, trust. He trusted us, we trusted him. And my eyes opened that I am not judging anybody by where they are sitting, what they smell like, what they look like. After that day, I have put that in my thoughts that I would never do that. But that person, without knowing if we would give them the money back to him, because that time there was no electronic stuff that we could transfer stuff, right? No, nothing like that. But he gave us 1,000 rupees, and then we were able to go on with our journey.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and then we did give back his money to the address he gave us.
Ruma, that's beautiful, and it sounds like the gift was so much greater than even the money that he brought, because there was so much that was revealed to you then. Thank you so much. What a powerful story. And we all have these stories.
Yeah.
Graham and Jody. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Would love to hear if you have anything you'd like to add or share.
Yes. Oh, what beautiful stories. Thank you so much for sharing, everybody. I do have something that's really come up, but I don't know if I can tell it in a short amount of time. So I just want to share, like, fear and doubt, like, since I was a kid, really controlled my life, controlled my life. And I had just struggle after struggle. And oh man, maybe I can try to share it real quick about, I used to have these reoccurring nightmares, and just fear. I just scared of everything and everybody, most of my life, and all these reoccurring nightmares. And I just remember one day in, should I tell you the nightmare? So I was always like running through the woods, and there was somebody coming after me, and and at the end of this nightmare, every time I was either like about to get shot. I mean, I was watching people get shot around me, and running always. But then one day I'm just like, I'm tired of all this fear, and I decided, like, I can't do this anymore. Life is not meant to be this way. And I remember it clear as day. This was like May of 2012. And I'm like, I'm going to face my fears. And then I'm like, what the heck do I do now that I've made this decision? So of course I go to the Google, and I'm like, okay, how does a person face their fears? And it gives me like 33 examples or suggestions. And I'm like, I remember printing them off, 3 pages, and I'm like, man, I got a lot of work to do. Like, where do I even start? Okay, I'll just, whatever it takes. I'm just going to pick one and go from there. And I didn't even start doing any work. And that night, the dream changed. It was like the same setup, the same environment, the same kind of theme. I was hiding in the closet, and all of a sudden the gunman is coming around, coming to the door of the closet, and then all of a sudden there was somebody next to me that jumped up, ran away, and gunman opens up the closet door, and I remember just standing up and grabbing the barrel of the shotgun, and I pulled it down, and I'm like, what are you doing? And it ended up being a female, and she's like, I don't know. And I've never had another nightmare like that since. And I've just been, since then, on this really journey of healing and reprogramming, if you will, just like lots of deep healing. And actually, I love this topic about trust, because this last year, that has actually been my intention, is that I deeply trust myself in navigating. And this has been such a key for me this last year, that no matter what is coming up, I just remember I can draw from my core. I can trust myself. So
Right on, Jody. Awesome. Good for you. What a powerful message, you know, really powerful. Thank you. Graham, did you want to share something?
Thank you so much.
No, for you.
Well, those are really good insights, you know, so many different dimensions from so many different angles, where we sought for some help and we got it intuitively, or it just changed our thinking. The thinking before and after was so different, so revealing, and it solved a deeper problem within ourselves. You know, like in Ruma's story, the problem was of money. That was on a short time frame.
Right.
But the judgment was a mindset thing, which also got shifted. Yeah. So the 1,000 rupees solved their immediate problem of going back home. But this man's coming forward to help and trusting them with that money, his hard-earned money, shifted her whole personality and perception of life. So what a great thing. Yeah. And also for that fearful in the closet coming out and catching the woman, and, you know, every little bit that trusting with the medical treatment for Romy, and for Dawn to accept that, you know, whatever is happening, the relationships that I am in, let it take its time and either fall or rise along the flow of life. Beautiful, beautiful, you know, it's so enriching for all of us.
Yes, exactly. And I thank everyone to join in and share those insights, because, you know, I think we often don't value, or we discount or even dismiss the power of our stories, not just in storytelling, because, you know, as Graham mentioned, it is true. We have this opportunity to hear a story, and we settle into that and experience lots of different things that pop up from our own life. But to be able to share in this way stories, I would just encourage you to continue to do that, to share those stories, to expand in that way, because this is the real human part of who we are and how we're evolving at this time. With that being said, we encourage you to share and continue to share within your circles, and to share Pure Esperanza and the work that we're doing. Our YouTube channel will have this particular episode, our last one, our 12th one of Weaving Stories of Your Well-Being. And there's so many on there, so many beautiful stories on there. And we can draw inspiration and strength and courage and faith from all those different parts. And we can call upon one another, and we can not just one another as in terms of physical beings, but we can even call from out there in the beyond and the invisible, whatever way we want to name that power, that source, that spirit, God, whatever name you give it.
Right.
And we can
Graham has to go on telling stories. You can't stop your role as a storyteller. And I think we all have a child within us all the time, thirsty for stories. You know, we kind of feel that we've grown out of stories. No, we didn't.
Trusting from within. So, and Balaka, I'd just like to thank you once again for all the loving thought, care, and energy that you've given to weaving stories of your well-being. And for more inspiration, more empowerment, more of that knowing that you are creating your life, join us at PureEsperanza.org. We have some beautiful things manifesting this coming year where we hope to see you all in so many different ways, dimension-wise as well. And follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, join and connect on LinkedIn. So many opportunities there. Thank you again all for being here. And you can look for Balaka at your website, thegreenwriter.com, and see what she's doing there. Follow her on Facebook. She has so many beautiful projects and insights to environmental awareness and just so many ways that we can connect with Mother Earth. Thank you so much. Thank you all for all your beautiful shining light. Thank you. Be well, my friends. Aho.
Yes, and love the storytelling life that was unfolding for us. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And a lot of beautiful stories in 2022.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today, everyone.